good afternoon and welcome to this webinar organized by eTwinning Europe. My name is Marta and I'm pleased to host this event today. Just a practical information for the audience, the webinar is recorded and the recording might be used for dissemination purposes. If you have questions, please post them in the chat and we will have a Q&A session in the end. Today's focus is boosting language learning through eTwinning. In this webinar, you will be given insights into activities from successful eTwinning projects with a specific focus on language learning and content and language integrated learning. Useful web tool will be introduced to promote digital literacy in connection to language learning and eTwinning project implementation. I'm very happy to introduce you Patrizia Roma and Dora Eniu, two experienced eTwinning ambassadors and active teachers. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Yes, okay. So why we decided to give this title to the webinar? Because it's definitely the truth, because everything is there, because the approach, the eTwinning approach includes all the essentials and much more, because you can teach a language, you can learn a language, you can involve your students in nice, challenging activities so you can improve their motivation. You can develop lots of skills, not only the language learning skills, but a lot of so-called transversal skills. Everything is there. That's why I have been using the eTwinning methodology for 20 years. Not 20, no. Because I started in 2006, so 15 years, yes, 15 years. I've never stopped, you know, I got addicted to this approach because it gives me and my students everything I need, all the tools, all the equipment, all the motivation I need to do my job at the best that I can. And so you can include lots of different skills in one project. So this is information about me and Dora. As I told you, I started using eTwinning in 2006. I did lots and lots of projects, and gradually I learned how to plan, how to design a project better and better during the course of my years and my experience. And every year I join interesting proposals of my colleagues, or I think about ideas and we plan and collaborate. And every year we try to find something motivating for the students and for us as well. Dora will introduce herself later. So,
I'm sorry, Patrizia. Patrizia, I'm sorry, I lost connection earlier on. I think it was because of the screen sharing. Yeah, it was. Can you hear me loudly and clearly now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, so I lost connection because of the screen sharing, I think. But just as we start, just a brief greeting from me as well. So as Patrizia also, I'm an English language teacher, and I've been involved in eTwinning since 2009. I've been working as an eTwinning ambassador for the past 7-8 years, and since 2016 I've been working with the ESL group. So we've worked with Patrizia in many projects, and as she said, we're trying to do as much as we can to motivate students and maybe try to apply all the theory that our teachers, our students learn in a more practical way. And that's the point of the entire webinar, to find more motivating and practical ways of learning languages. So Patrizia, I'll be talking later on. I'm all ears.
Okay.
And Patrizia, can you try to maybe to adapt the volume, because some people are saying that they cannot hear. So maybe if you.
Okay. Is it better now? I hope so.
Let's see in the chat, because for me, I can hear very well,
Okay.
but no,
Okay.
they are saying no. So maybe you
They say
can,
no.
it's
Well,
low.
I can try to remove my headphones. I don't know if it's better now without the headphones. If you can hear me well,
I think so.
probably.
I think so. It's better, I think.
Is it better now?
Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay, so no headphones. So why an eTwinning project is a challenge? Of course it's a challenge because you have to bring together people from different nationalities, different cultures, different timetables. So you have to put all of them together and exchange ideas and collaborate. So it's a challenge in itself, but it is worth it because it gives you a lot of opportunities, and you can, especially as a language teacher, you can use real communication. So students feel that it's not something for the teacher's sake, it's not something for the curriculum, it's not something for the program or whatever, but it's something real. There are real people, real teenagers like them on the other side of the computer, and they are talking to real people. So real communication, I think, is the best we can offer them as language teachers. And so we can develop their communicative competence, because when they are engaged in a project, in activities, they do a lot of things that are useful in language learning. So presenting themselves, asking questions, they comment on other teachers, other students' ideas. They write collaborative texts. They interview people. They express their opinions. So everything is there. Everything we want to stimulate in a language student. And also, while doing this, they learned how to collaborate, how to work in a team, and how to use digital tools which are necessary for working at distance. So all these opportunities are inside one eTwinning project, and more, because we can also improve the motivation of our students. I recently heard a webinar from Cambridge, and they suggested strategies for improving motivation. Well, all these strategies are in eTwinning, because you have to focus on students' need and students' wants, possibly combine these two elements. And whenever we design a project, of course, we pay special attention to what can be the students' need, what can be interesting to them. And of course, we can also differentiate the tasks, because when there is group work, every student in the group can have a different role, can develop their passions, what they are best at. For example, some can be drawers, some can be interviewers. So any student has the possibility to do what they are more comfortable at. And we can vary the lessons. The lessons are not routine. It's not routine, definitely. And also for us as teachers, I have a lot of experience. I've been teaching for 36 years now. And so avoiding routine is a need also for the teacher, from my point of view. I really need to avoid routine to be always enthusiastic and to transmit this enthusiasm to my students. I can adapt the materials, because of course the materials that we can find, the resources we find for eTwinning projects are various, are different. Some are real, authentic materials, so we can adapt them. We can give students a choice when we design the activities, especially the final activity, where students have to think about solutions to problems, about what they want to communicate as a result of the project. They have a choice. They can produce different kinds of products. and the goals which we set are meaningful to them, because, for example, they can make a difference maybe in their school life or in their daily life. They can communicate something to their peers, and even progressing through the projects. This creates more motivation to the students. So everything in one place, all in one place. That's why we decided to say all inclusive. And of course, the 4 skills of the language curriculum can be practiced in this context. And the focus is not on how good you are at language, grammar, or whatever. The focus is, can you collaborate? Can you communicate with the other students? Can you find the solution to the problem? Can you exchange ideas? Can you comment? Not how good you are at and school subject, but how good you are, how much effort you put in something which is real life. And of course, this encourages also the weaker students, because they don't feel they are studying, they feel they are doing something different, they are working with other peers. And of course, by doing this, they shift the focus. It's not a school subject. It's something more useful, something more interesting. And the 4 language skills that every teacher knows, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, are all integrated in the activities. The majority of the times it's difficult to separate them. We did something similar just to give you examples, but in activities, in project activities, the skills are usually integrated. So we started with some examples for this project, Beyond the Borders. Was a project that I did 4 years ago, and it was focused on inclusion, on tolerance, on acceptance of what and who is different, a need which is always present in our societies, and more as year passes. So this project was focused on accepting others, and among the various activities that we designed, there was, of course, reading and reading authentic texts, because to make the project more interesting, we look for authentic materials. Can be texts, or in this case it was I copied here on the project Twin Space, on the page I copied the extract of a speech from a journalist, which concentrated on the fact that unity is not pretending that we are all the same. We are different, but we also have lots of things in common. So difference is not a problem. We have lots of differences, we have lots of things in common, and we can be united by what we have in common if we focus our attention on what is similar among us. So we gave the students this text, and students after that had to react. And we gave them 2 answer gardens, 2, let's say, brainstorming tools. I don't know if you are familiar with this tool. It's quite well known because it's easy to use. And you input here in the white line, you input your words, and it creates automatically a word cloud. So students had to read the text, and then they had to comment on the text. They had to reply to Answer Garden by, for example, saying what made them different, what made them special, but also in another Answer Garden they had to write what made them similar to others. And then they had a forum in which they had to write, answer some questions, for example, why do you think people exclude one another, or have you ever been, let's say, an outsider? How does it feel to be an outsider? So they reflected on their personal life and their personal experiences. And what is surprising is that they wrote real experiences they had. And so this made them self-conscious on the problem, on the issue of the project. Another example, which can be considered an example of writing, is taken from this project, which is called Together for a Better Tomorrow. This was the European Prize winner in 2020 for the special category English language, which was awarded by the British Council. And the project was focused on how to make choices in our everyday life in order to make the world a better place in general, but not on very big goals, just on small goals, which could be done by all of us. And an example of this writing activity is collaborative poems. So students used Google Docs to collaborate and then issue for the publishing of their poems. And surprisingly, my students were students of a technical high school, so the humanities are not their best subjects. Because I teach to mechanics students, students who specialize in mechanics, but they were able to write collaborative poems with other students. So each of them, each of the teams had chosen a problem, a topic, and then they had to collaborate on these Google documents. All the various national groups wrote some lines together in order to create a poem. And after that, we had these poems and we published them as one of the final products of this project. Another example of a writing activity is taken from the project Let's Become the Reporters of the World, which was carried out 3 years ago. And this was based on media literacy, on the importance of detecting fake news and being able to analyze sources of information and to be critical thinkers before believing everything that we read just because it's on internet. And the writing activity was, in the end, that every eTwinning project usually has, let's say, 3 main stages. So the brainstorming, the ice-breaking activities, then we have the core activities and the final activity, the production. So this was the final phase of the project in which students had to produce something after having analyzed the problem, the issues that are linked to fake news. There was also a very nice game to see how many scores they got if they were good at detecting the fake news. And in the end, they had to write their own newspapers or their own magazines. So the students decided, for example, what sections they wanted to include in their magazine or in their newspaper, what titles to give to their newspaper, what they wanted to write about, sports or technology or everyday life or politics or society or whatever. So they decided, each international team decided on what to include in this magazine and how to share roles. And so you can see that students were given complete freedom of creativity about their choices. And they called, this is an example, they called it Sunrise News. One of the magazines they produced was called the Sunrise News. Somebody wrote about sports, somebody about electric cars, pros and cons. So they were free to choose the topics that were more interesting to them. Going on, I have another example from a project. We can say it's a listening activity, but not all the listening. As I said before, all the skills, the linguistic skills, are integrated in the activities. We can consider this a listening activity because it includes a playlist and music. The project was called Singing History for Democracy. We did it 2 years ago, and it was a different way to study history because it concentrated on musicals, and how through musicals, how through this form of art, were represented the fights of people for democracy. And one of the activities of this project was creating a playlist. So students had to listen to a playlist, react to the playlist, say what they thought about the playlist, if they liked it or not, and create their own playlist of songs which could be considered examples of fight for democracy, for people's rights. And one more example is, which includes music, is taken from this project, which was a multilingual project. The title was In Songs Words Fly. It was in English and Spanish. And in this project, students had to think about the songs they knew, that they could do also some research about the lyrics of songs and connect the songs to various topics. For example, songs and society, songs and feelings, songs and cultural heritage. And in the end, they had to write a collaborative song on freedom by using the music of the European anthem, but changing the lyrics. So the lyrics had to be created by themselves. Going on with other examples of activities, one project which was more concentrated on speaking was this project called Life in Pieces, a story of the mind. It was before the pandemic, and it was concentrated on what kind of stresses teenagers live in their daily life, and how to cope with these stresses, and how to find ways to react positively, of course, and find solutions to these stressful moments in their life. And students had to create, let's say, this was one of the introductory activities of the project. They had to create talking pictures using various tools. One, for example, here is called Speaking Photo, but sure there are many others, in which they could record their voice over a picture and then upload their recording, their talking picture on a Padlet. And in this activity, they had to explain what was most stressful to them. Of course, the majority said exams were the main source of stress. And they could comment, they could like, so they could react to the pictures of other students. Another example I can show you is taken from the project Mirror Mirror. This was another successful project because it was the European Prize winner for the age category 16-19. This project was concentrating on the pressure of media on body image, on looking beautiful, on looking perfect, and how much this pressure of the media was stressful for the students, how they felt this problem of being perfect according to some, let's say, models, which can be celebrities, which can be famous people, or the advertising. So you see images of certain kinds of people around you, and of course you want to look like those models, but it's not possible because sometimes they are not even real. And so we analyzed this issue, And the students, in analyzing the problem, how much pressure was put on them by social media, by looking according to certain parameters, they created a survey for their class, but also for the students of their schools. After they had analyzed the results, they recorded. So they recorded videos of students that presented their results of the survey according to different points of view. For example, celebrities, or feeling bad about your body, or the media images or insecurities. All these were elements of the survey which were then analyzed by the students, the results presented in videos. So students recorded their videos with their mobile phones or tablets, and then we put all these videos which commented on the results of the survey on a ThingLink image. ThingLink is another tool which allows you to combine different media like images and audio, or links to websites, and etc. Another project that I can take here as an example is Futuretopia. We did this project last year, and me and Dora were partners together with other colleagues from other countries, and this project wanted to bring the students to think about their ideal society. So it's a mix of future and utopia. So we wanted to see how a perfect society could be imagined by students. And of course it was a mixture of culture and literature, because we also analyzed the literary genres of utopia and dystopia, and then we asked the students to create their own utopia for the future. In this project, one activity was creating videos using FlipGrid as a tool. So FlipGrid allows different people to record in the application their own videos, or to upload videos that they already have recorded with a different application, and the teacher can decide how long the video has to be. It can be 1 minute or 3 minutes, or it depends from the teacher, from the settings of the application. And then you share the link on the TwinSpace, and the students record their video. So this is speaking activities, and all the other students, all the other partners can see and can comment and can react on their partners' videos. And this is, of course, a speaking activity. So the students speak to their peers, not to the teacher for the teacher's sake, not just for the mark on the register, but to talk about, in this case, to talk about their dreams for the future. And I think my part of the presentation is over, because now I see examples from projects that Dora prepared. So unless there are questions now, I think we can go on with Dora, and then maybe the questions at the end. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
As you have already noticed, Patricia organized her presentation, her part of the presentation, according to the 4 linguistic skills that we teach as part of our language classes at school. Of course, we know that in eTwinning we integrate all 4 skills, and all these were great examples as to how this integration can take place with a communicative, in a communicative context and a meaningful purpose. So I was trying to think of something else, another dimension to add to how eTwinning can become an all-inclusive methodology in language learning. And I found out that we also worked with a focus in grammar and vocabulary per se, in a project that we did in 2016 and 17. It was called CLIL, Creative Learning in a Computer Kingdom. That project focused on developing digital skills, but also in activating students in creating their own exercises in the form of quiz and games as regards to grammar and vocabulary. So we used this application called quizzes. Actually, these were just 2 activities of the entire project, so that they gradually got involved in the topic. As you can see on the right, it was step 5, grammar learning. So they formed international groups, and each group decided to work on a specific field of grammar on the level B1 plus, B2. And for example, we have here comparatives, past tenses, adverbs, modals, present tenses, or ing forms, something which is really, typical in language learning, English language learning, but from another point of view, because the students themselves had to create their own quizzes. And then we had the dot storming wall, where they voted for the best quizzes, and they chose the ones they favored the most. We also had forum threads that we activated, and they discussed there on during the course of their work on how to create these questionnaires, and what to include, what not to include, the main theory, or some extra examples. We followed a similar course of action for vocabulary, and you can see here that we chose some typical vocabulary units, topics of that CEFR level. So you can see, for example, home and shopping, traveling and art, human body and food, sport and landscape, films, nature, environment, and we used Quizlet to create flashcards with words, meanings, expressions, definitions, and again, in a playful way, the students were involved in choosing, in deciding what they wanted to include or not. And we collected these flashcards in an ebook. You can see the print screen there. We had some illustration as well as the link to each Quizlet game. What I'd like to point out is that it is really important for students to be involved in the decision-making process. And I think that all of Patricia's project examples, as well as these which I'm presenting you, are such examples. Students are not passive, let's say, consumers of exercises or of instructions, but they create their own activities, their own questionnaires, either open-ended or closed tests. So I think it's a good way of activating their critical thinking, not only when we discuss a social topic, but also when we ask them to decide what kind of language they want to use and for which purpose. Now, as part of this, let's say, philosophy, we had another project called Learn English Plus in 2014 and 15, always with working at this age group. But I think that many of these activities are really easy to adjust in lower ages as well. So we were trying to engage teens and help them reflect on how we can use technology to create language exercises. And here we were trying to create a Mooc. So the students created actually all the content of the Mooc. It was designed by students for students, And the final result, the final outcome, was featured in the pages of the eTwinning space, of the twin space of the project. It was, as I said, at this level of B1/B2, and it contained the topics that you see on the left: literature and arts, geography, history, science, nature, sports and leisure, entertainment. What the children did was to form, again, transnational groups and choose one topic. And there they created either grammar or vocabulary exercises, or they chose some kind of video or text to feature. And they used some of these applications, for example, Prezi, to make a presentation on a topic, let's say, relevant to geography, or learning apps to create some games of their own, ThingLink to tag material on images, quizzes and Quizlet that I have already mentioned. And you see also that we tried to provide Creative Commons licenses and sensitize people regarding how to use other people's content. Now, another project which goes beyond strict language learning was a project we did in 2016-17. It was called To Be Continued. Well, we all know that this is the expression that we use in the end of a story or a short series or something similar. So the idea was to create a collaborative book with creative writing created by our students. And we would use multimedia to animate it, so enrich it either with video or with audio files. And as you can see, we had 7 different international teams. So what we usually do in all these projects is that after one activity that is about introducing ourselves to the other students, trying to find some things in common in relation to the main topic, then we always form the international groups. We never work in national teams for more than 1 or 2 activities. The main work is done in international groups, and this is what eTwinning calls for. And we always have students make some decisions, no matter how small or how big. So we give them usually an extra page that we call either a treasure chest or a toolbox, and they get together in different international groups and then they choose. So there is a web tool toolbox where they choose applications from. There is also a toolbox of activities. So in other projects, or in this one as well, they decide what kind, let's say, of creative writing they want to choose from a different variety. For example, do they want a ghost story? Do they want a detective story? Do they want a romantic story? They have this list of different types of stories, in this case of activities, in another case, and they choose what they want to include. And they might even, in some cases, group themselves according to their decisions. We did some color coding here. So they worked using collaborative documents, Google Documents, and then in TriCider they had voting, deciding which ideas they wanted to favor in their teams. You can see on the left some of the pages of the twin space that followed collaborative writing. We compiled the materials in an audiobook. We got ready to publish it. We were trying to disseminate and catch readers' attention. You notice that all activities are relevant to a different page, and that pages are not national. They address the entire topic of the project and not the work of a single school. This is not to be done. One other important, in my view, part of writing in this case is proofreading by peers. And this is also part of a process called process writing. So we are not placing emphasis on the end product per se, which is something that we normally do in language classes. For example, we take the notebook where the student has written down a piece of writing, whatever genre it belongs to. It could be, let's say, an article or a story as here, or anything else. But we teachers take the finished product in our hands through either a notebook or an email. But here we are interested in the process itself. So it's really important that students not only write collaboratively, but also proofread and comment and make suggestions on how this piece of writing can be improved. So this is another way of activating students, and of course teachers in this respect can become mentors in each international group. So we compiled, as you can see on page 10, the interactive ebook and audiobook that you see on the right, the picture, using this very, very nice tool, MadMags, that gives you many different templates. It's French, but I think you can easily understand what it can do, and I think it is also there is also a choice for English as well. We also had some reading time, because it's really important not only to write something, but also to reflect on it, even when it is finished. So we had time to read each other's stories, I mean, in terms of international groups, and express our opinions, whether we liked it, we rated it. We wrote some comments on a Padlet wall. So you can either have quantitative or qualitative approach to your evaluation. I think that since we're talking about language, quantitative approaches are not so suitable, because we are trying to make our students to express themselves. So just circling or choosing a single answer may not always help us achieve this goal. Of course, we can always combine both. And we also had this nice award that we shared with each other. Now, I also wanted to bring your attention to some possibilities regarding content and language integration. So I've got here one of the projects we did in 2013 and 2014, which may be a long time ago, but I still find it really, really relevant and very popular, because in 2018, cultural heritage became one of the flagships of the European Commission and education and eTwinning as well. So although it was implemented much earlier, the topic is really relevant even today. A Day in the Museum, that was the title of the project, and the focus was on a journey in space and time, in an effort to explore the most important objects that represent the historical periods of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. So it's classical antiquity, and most of these are on display in major European museums. You can see here I took one of the photos of a very, very well-known statue, the Nike of Samothrace, which is part of the exhibits that you can find in digital form in the Europeana portal. So we had many activities in this project, but one that I liked most was one called Let's Talk About History, a radio broadcast. And it was inspired by a series of podcasts created by the BBC. And the title was The History of the World in 100 Objects. That was a series of podcasts in 2012 and 2013. Of course, podcasts are really popular today, and they have, in many respects, replaced articles in newspapers, probably because they have this quality of being much more lively. And it's a good way of incorporating multi-literacies in our classes and create multimodal materials. So this activity combined this element of a multimodal text, not just in a written form, but presented orally as well. But also, what I like in many activities is to have a kind of a scenario, a small simulation, something that engages students, and it's not just about, giving instructions, do this or do that. So here we ask them to imagine that NASA has decided to choose some artifacts to represent human civilization and send them to Mars in a mission to Mars. So the teams, the international teams, had to choose the most representative masterpieces and record the podcast explaining why they considered these artifacts from a classical antiquity to be worthy of being included in this mission. And then we would listen to the podcasts which were recorded and choose our favorite ones, again, with tools like Tricider, dot storming, or anything similar. Again, I'd like to point to draw your attention and point out that we don't use a Padlet wall just to use it, but because we have to either present our materials or brainstorm or collaborate and comment. So the point is what we want to do, which function we want to promote, and not which tool we are going to use. Of course, tools are necessary and they provide so many solutions, but we shouldn't forget that for students it's not important whether they use Tricider or dot storming. What is important is to interact, is to decide, is to express their opinions. So we should definitely use technology, but always bear in mind that we use technology for a specific reason. Now, another activity of this project was, towards the end of it, was a night in the museum, and the students, after having strolled around digital museums, they were asked to create a collaborative story. We all know the film, Night in the Museum, where exhibits come to life. It's a movie that students loved at the time, and it's still broadcast on TV. So they were asked, let's say, to imagine that they were in the Louvre, a fascinating museum, a fascinating experience. They ended up there at night, and there is a night security guard. So while being there, walking around, they find out that some ancient statues or exhibits are coming back to life, and we are asking them to create their own story while imagining, making up some dialogues and trying to use reported speech as well as direct speech, and we also gave them quite detailed instructions, because it's not always, about, for example, write a story. Yeah, okay, but students need to know what to include in the story. They need to have specific details, and this is something that we should also bear in mind when deciding to design some kind of collaborative writing. Another project we did, which was implemented last year in 2021, is about modern history. And actually, I'm sorry, because I'm writing here that it has a European quality label. It doesn't. It's just copy-paste from another project. I'm sorry, because obviously European quality labels and national quality labels are not yet released. So I hope it gets a quality label, but not yet. So how could history have been different if we had internet and smart devices back then? So conditionals, first conditional, second conditional, third conditional is always one of the key grammar structures to teach. And especially third conditional is always more demanding in a way. So students had the chance through this project to wonder how history could have been different, use also relevant structures, and reflect on the role of social media applications and how the use of social media could have changed major important events. For example, imagine the Peloponnese War and how Thucydides would have written history if he lived in the modern era. A fun activity we had was Give History Up. Well, giving up is in general a fun activity, and it doesn't always have to be language learning, doesn't always have to be about writing always or reading. The children want some breaks, they need something fun. And we used this website, GIFI, to create GIFs inspired by the different historical eras to which we focused. We used the material from the Europeana. Of course, we had to be careful as to choose only pictures that were in public domain, or at least they were allowed to be reused. And you can see here some examples. Of course, they are not animated, but if you visit the pages of the project, you would be able to see them. Another example that I really liked in that project was an activity called Discovering the European Heritage Label Sites. So this is an example of collaborative writing and process writing again in international groups, but probably the end product is not one of the most usual genres that we have, like stories or articles and reports. So the students were asked to create leaflets answering some questions like why this place is really important, how it has contributed to common European history, and other such questions. So they made these leaflets, and through these leaflets they had the chance to expand their horizons, and through English to learn about the history of other countries of Europe, which is of course totally different to our own. We all have obviously different kinds of aspects that we focus on in history classes. In all these examples of CLIL projects, obviously you might be teaching another subject too, or you can just cooperate with another teacher who teaches these subjects. Another project that focused on civic science was smart democracy and creativity to promote democratic participation. So we wanted to focus on global citizenship and democratic participation, and that project at the time was awarded with the Move to Learn award of the relevant initiative. So very easy and motivating yet activity again was the one carried out for the International Day of Democracy on the 15th September, which has just gone through. So in TwinSpace forum threads, and at this point I'd like to say that TwinSpace has many nice tools that we should use, and we see that forum threads provide a very solid place for collaboration and communication. We also used pictures from Wikimedia that offers many free-to-use pictures and a very simple tool, Poster My Wall. So the students started working on the notion of democracy from the era of the Athenian democracy till the very 21st century. So you can see the quotes they chose were quite representative of what democracy is considered to be. And you can see here only some of the leaders reported, such as Mahatma Gandhi or Aristotle, Abraham Lincoln, and many, many more. Another short project, well, it wasn't short, but it was carried out through the first COVID year, was called Staying Human in the Digital World. It was quite relevant at the time because we founded it without knowing, of course, that we would depend so much on digital technology to even to have classes at school. So we were trying to point out that the biggest challenge for us humans was to adapt to the changes of the digital time. But we had to find ways to embrace technology in order to survive, but also keep our human characteristics, which is mostly being close to our emotions and being creative. So as part of this activity, which had some STEAM features, I chose to show you this activity with a very well-known and popular, I believe, form of poetry, which is called Blackout Poetry. And the students were asked to create their own blackout poems by designing their own images, choosing words from a text. I don't know if you know how blackout poetry works. So you choose a text and you cross out all the irrelevant words and you just feature those which are related to the topic that you want to bring out, and you try to be as creative as you can. So that was one of the first activities of the project in an effort to raise awareness and profit from their creativity. So you can see here not only the pictures of the poems, but also the international groups that were formed later on to research how all these fields, for example, jobs, healthcare, education, innovation and technology, food, transportation and travel, were affected by technology, artificial intelligence. So the students had to make presentations after reading suggested articles on how, for example, education is affected, let's say, by artificial intelligence. And then we compiled all their work in the form of presentations or articles in an ebook. But on the other hand, we also had some fun creating some word clouds. Another project that I love is related to reading, the reading experience, literature. And I think that we are all language teachers, so we love literature, all of us would do, but our students don't. And in many respects, they were never exposed to literature. I was actually amazed when I realized that some of my students hadn't read literature since their mother was reading them, used to read them fairy tales. So we were trying to rediscover literature, to connect it to young people's interests and artistic expression, and extend to multimodal forms of media production. And again, in international groups, we picked 7 different fields like young adult fiction, action-packed novels, sci-fi, autobiographies, crime stories, fantasy, history and adventure novels. And each team was assigned a page, and working collaboratively, they had to transform the content of the book they chose or the books they chose under the same theme in order to present it to their classmates. So, for example, I remember one team that chose 1984. Of course, not all of them read the book, but we used websites such as SparkNotes to have a summary, to have some videos. In other cases, there were books like the Divergent series, which is both a book and a film. So the students could decide if they wanted to read the book or watch it or read the summary. We were very flexible about it. And then they compiled all these presentations, infographics in some cases. They created posters, anything, any kind of relevant, let's say, interpretation of the book they were reading, and even Class Toolnet, which gives you the chance to create fake book profiles, fake Twitter accounts, etc., and create a different kind of narration and dialogue between the protagonists, the leading characters of the book. The name of the project was Book Crossing, and Book Crossing, as the title suggests, is a place where books meet, and actually it was borrowed by a relevant movement, let's say, where people exchanged books, and they had meeting points where they talked about literature. The final project I'd like to present you is one focusing on environmental awareness. It was called Imagine Action, and it was also a National Prize winner. Now, this is related to the United Nations global goals and how this world can become more sustainable. And most importantly, what can the average person or student do? How can they make these goals theirs? Because many times we see that there are initiatives from the top, but they never reach the bottom. So that was an effort to go from the bottom to the top. Of course, you know that in CLIL projects, the focus is not mainly linguistic, but mainly it has a focus on the content. So infographics, for example, one of the team activities was to present a goal they have chosen in an infographic after they had read some relevant articles, news articles, or watched some news reports. Actually, infographics are a quite demanding form of written expression. It combines visuals, and it means that you can analyze information first, and then you have to synthesize it all over again. So it is also relevant to Bloom's taxonomy, and it requires high-order thinking skills. Of course, it's an activity that if it is to be produced by the students, needs a lot of preparation. So we don't just tell the students, okay, you go and create one. First, they need to read and find and think how information is presented in infographics, and then they can create their own. Or, of course, infographics are a great way of, are great stimuli of so as to write reports. We all know the traditional reports we have in language learning, but not with the former boring charts, but with more interesting ways of expression. So the visually striking way was a kind of motivation. It took a lot of work to produce their own. Not all of them were perfect, of course, but it was worth the try. You can see that the international groups had to create the infographics according to the goal they had chosen. I have just some of them. And then they produced their own podcasts for a radio show on the relevant goals again. And below, as you can see, we had the toolboxes 1, 2, and 3 with copyright-free material, with instructions how to do this or how to do that. In this case, how to create a radio show with free jingles and sounds. Don't forget to provide support to your students as much as you can, and in an effort to take the project out of the box of the twin space, we had this Twitter handle, which we find much more convenient than Facebook and Facebook groups. We think that Twitter handles are more appropriate to communicate your ideas. And also, it's a good kind of practice for our students, not only to learn how to express themselves in many words and how to be eloquent in a foreign language, but also how to be able to express themselves in shorter ways, being limited by a number of characters or words. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you got...
Thank you very much, Laura.
I hope the time is okay, and I think we showed examples of tools throughout the presentation of various projects. So I think, Marta, will the presentation also be uploaded somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We will share it together with the recording. So thank you very much for presenting these projects. I'm sure the participants found them really useful. And actually, we are a bit late, but maybe we have time. I saw just a couple of questions. So the first one was about the name of this project. Laura, can you maybe tell us the name of this project?
Oh, I said that at the time, book crossing. It's just here.
Okay. Perfect.
On the logo.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question was actually about the age category, because they seem to be addressed for the age category 16 plus. But would you have any suggestions on how to make it make projects for younger people?
Before Patricia answers, I just wanted to say that all of these activities can easily be adjustable. Well, for example, maybe infographics are more demanding, but I think that, let's say, creative writing is also part of the curriculum of the primary school. Or Blackout Poetry, it's definitely something you can do with young learners. Creating, let's say, a short presentation or a poster or a word cloud. All of these are activities that you can implement with primary school children. So I don't think we should differentiate the two age groups. We just have to adjust. And I also wanted to say that I have taken part last year in a project which was great. I really enjoyed it. My 17-year-old students really enjoyed it. It was about the history and legends of Ireland and Scotland, and we worked with students of the first grade of high school, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14 and 15-year-olds. So it was not just Lyceum students. There were students from all ages. One thing we did, for example, when writing stories was that older children wrote the story and younger children illustrated it. So it was a good way of collaboration. And I think it was very, very easy to adjust all these activities. Just keep an open mind. Don't expect to get like a recipe for a project or an activity. Use your imagination. That's what we ask our students to do. We can do it ourselves. So that's all for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dora. Patricia, maybe you want to add something?
Yes, I definitely agree with Dora because I said it at the beginning. This is something challenging for all of us, but it's at the heart of our profession. So we have to be creative and try to give our students the best opportunities we can give them by connecting to other peers in Europe. So I think these ideas can be adapted to all age levels depending on the situations, depending on the students' need. Listen to your students, listen to what they would like to do, and maybe you will find the right adjustment for your specific situation. And thank you for everything. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you, Dora. Thank you, Marta and Eleonora, for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today and for presenting all these wonderful examples. There are no other questions, so I would like to wish you all a good evening. And remember that you can complete the feedback form that we posted in the chat. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.